Clone Wars Season 5, Episode 4, Unfinished Business. So this episode brings us to the end of the, at least first part. We'll see what happens if they bring the characters back. But this brings us to the end of our first arc in this final season, which is, I would consider it the Bad Batch arc, or it could be considered like the Echo Rescue arc, if you will. And I thought it was a great episode. They did some really good stuff in this. Anakin killing the one guy, I love that scene because I was like, okay, this is like the dark stuff that they're gonna touch on, because we never got that because the series got canceled before it could go further into episode 3 and stuff. And I loved it. That scene, that's probably my favorite scene in the whole episode. Honestly, I was just watching that moment and I was like, okay, this is good. I like this. It reminded me a lot of the beginning of episode 3, like when they fight Count Dooku, and it's like, okay, they're going through, wiping out droids. It's a cool sequence. They're flying through and like it looks amazing. Then they get on the ship, they pop out, cut a bunch of droids up. They have the cool elevator scene where they, get surrounded and they just like slice them up. Everything's great. They get to Dooku and he beats them, and then it's like, cool, cut his head off. And I was like, oh, this is getting dark. And of course he does it. And I was like, all right, it reminded me of that. And that's fantastic. I love, we know where it's going. It's not like, holy crap, he's Darth Vader. So we know where it's going. I'm glad that they're kind of putting that in there. And I'm very curious to see how much of that we're going to really experience throughout this season. So I can't wait to see how that plays out. I'm really curious what's going to happen when we get to like Ahsoka rejoining them and stuff like that. What is that going to mean? Is she going to see him, do something that's really dark, and maybe that's what makes her leave again? There are a lot of questions to it. So I'm definitely looking forward to more, dark side moments from Anakin as he, eventually leads to episode 3, which of course leads to, Darth Vader. But I love that scene. That was fantastic. And, he starts off, and I like the way it was handled. Because of course it's like, oh, you can't kill me, you're a Jedi. And so the first move he makes to, scare him and stuff is like, he chops off all the robot side. I was like, oh, he can do it. He can threaten him. But technically he didn't hurt him just then. All he did was cut off a bunch of robot chunks. He can get that repaired. He doesn't feel anything on that side. It just scares him. And so he's like, I don't have those weaknesses. And I was like, oh, that was a sneaky threat. Like, it was darker, but nothing really happened. And then he actually killed him. And I was surprised by that, because I was like, oh, he did like a cool dark threat, but really he didn't do anything against, the good Jedi Order or anything like that. And I was like, oh, that's a sneaky way to do that. But it was, it's still dark. But ultimately, he didn't actually even hurt the guy. And then he straight up killed him, and he just like stabbed him through the chest. And I was like, well, that's different. He's dead now. So I like that scene. That was very cool. The whole episode, like them going through, and it's like, all right, they don't know if they can trust Echo or not. It's like, well, is he really on our side? Did we actually save him? He's been, in their possession for who knows how long. And we don't really know. Maybe there's like some internal stuff that will automatically make him, turn on us and stuff like that. So it was a good question. I was hoping that he was good. And of course, we do fortunately find out that nothing really happens and he's totally fine. But I like that question. Like, they put it in there and they answered it in one episode. And I was like, all right, good. I'm definitely glad, because that would have just made it even sadder. Like, he was just trapped the whole time and just screwed over and used to kill his friends and stuff. And then at the end, we find out that he's still under their control and they have to kill him. I'm like, that would be depressing. So I'm glad it didn't get that dark that fast. I heard that there's supposed to be some really sad stuff, which I assume would be kind of the Order 66 segments of the season. But I was like, good. I'm glad we didn't start this early with like just the depression. Like, oh, cool, they rescued him. And then Rex had to, Rex and Cody have to be like, wow, we have to shoot him in the head, and that's it. So I was glad that didn't happen. But I love the way it was handled, for sure. Like, they have to go through this crazy sequence where it's like, all right, we're going to fly up to this ship. We have Echo. He can hack in. He knows what they're going to do. We can use the algorithm against them, make them think that the algorithm is saying, do this specific thing. And then we can counteract the plan, because I'll just, wipe out all the droids, in an instant. And I like how that was played out. And there are a couple of things that I thought were really cool. And one particular thing that I thought was very, very interesting. And I mentioned this in my last review about the droids being stupid. And this is when they get on the ship, flying up to space. And so Echo is like, I'm going to send a signal to make them think that our ship is something else. Now, I figured that it was just going to be like, okay, we have a ship coming up. They were just going to see the ship and then, reach out to them. I didn't think it was going to be like a literal display. Like, this is the ship that's coming in. And this droid looks down at it. Droids that are literally made like, this is who we are. We are the Separatists / Republic or whatever. I forgot who is who. We're the Republic. They're, the Jedi / the clone army. this is bad. These are we're us, they are them, they're bad. It was literally a clone ship and it's flying up, and this droid looks at the screen like, hey, is this one of ours? And he's like about to turn back, and then it literally, not only is he looking at a ship that's already not one of theirs, and I'm like, this should be automatic. They literally make these droids as battle droids. They're supposed to be like, this is everything that we are, period. But then they gave them personality and made them weird, and they made them dumber, and they also make them scared. Which is sometimes funny and also sometimes like, man, that's a little left up, because now they're scared and they're like, please don't kill me. And then they get like sliced up, and it's like, I don't know how to think of this anymore. But it was literally looking at the screen as it's looking at a ship that's clearly not one of theirs. And then the screen glitches and turns into a totally different ship. And it's like, oh, never mind. It's one of ours. And I was like, this just, it's so ridiculous that they have these droids. They have spaceships. They have faster than light travel. But they have droids en masse. And they aren't programmed to be like, this is not our ship. Or when the screen at least glitches and literally transforms into something else, to reference it to whoever's in charge. Like, hey, I saw one ship on the screen. I wasn't sure if it was ours. And then the screen did this weird thing, and then it turned into one of our ships. Thought I'd let you know. And it just was like, oh, that's one of ours. And they flew right in. They got in. And everything was fine. And I was just like, that is so dumb. It just bugs me so much, because I'm like, how does, like, it just doesn't make sense. Like, it makes it pointless to have droids that you're creating because you make them stupid. And it just seemed weird. So like, that really stuck out to me, because I was like, they do silly stuff, and that was kind of the point, is to make them funnier as fodder, because obviously they're just droids. They get wiped out. They get wiped out more than stormtroopers do, because they're not even people. They just like, boom, we slice through them, everything's cool. And then it's like, okay, that's funny. But then they make them dumb like this, and it's like, it doesn't make sense. It's like a company building a program, and the program, if like Xbox made a program and then a PlayStation game was on the system and it just played, like the next Xbox isn't going to play a PlayStation game. That's the point. But if it was just like, it starts up and then it's like, oh, hold on, and then the game cuts off or something, it would be weird if that happened. That would be huge news. Like, why did this PlayStation game start playing on this Xbox? Like, it cut off, but it started. That wouldn't make sense, because something is made, even though that's not an AI thing, it's a program. Like, that's kind of the point. It's meant to read a specific thing. It's meant to do this very specific thing. And I was just like, it just doesn't know the ship. It didn't reference the fact that the screen glitched and turned into a totally different ship. None of that. It was just like, move along. So that obviously bugged me. Otherwise, I wouldn't have that stupid rant. But other than that, I did love the episode. That just really got me. I was just like, that's so dumb. But other than that, it was super cool. They go through. Rex, he's like, I trust Echo. Everyone else is still kind of freaking out a little bit. But Echo ultimately turns out to be on their side. He sends all the droids, after Obi-Wan and Mace Windu. And the funny thing about that is, he had his plan, and it technically worked. For the most part, until, Anakin had to, run and get, the final number for the code. But for the most part, it worked. Also, he still technically killed, everybody else. I feel like they killed everyone. All the clones died except for, maybe 5 that were actually with Obi-Wan and Mace Windu. Because they were, flying around, and then, the droids were, blasting them. And I was like, I know he has a plan, but that's kind of effed up a little bit, because they did have a bunch of clones get killed off. It didn't seem to be there where it was like, oh, we're gonna take out all these droids and wipe out the ship. That was it. That's all he thought of. And I guess, once again, I guess that's technically a part of their programming. It's like, you can care, but ultimately his plan was just like, oh yeah, send all the droids at them, but eventually they'll survive. But it took them a minute, and a lot of people got killed. A lot of the clones were killed off before Mace Windu was like, all right, I'm gonna hop down and take care of this bomb. So that was an interesting moment. That was something that was in my head too when I was watching. I was just like, he got a lot of clones killed technically with this plan that he had, and it worked. But he got a lot of clones killed during that very specific moment. So that was interesting. That was definitely interesting. But certainly enjoyed the episode. I thought the action was good when they got out. I'm pretty sure it was just normal. They kind of just escaped and stuff. I'm trying to make sure, because I did my last review and I was like, they had the cool wrecker scene and the sniper shot, and I was like, I hope that was that episode. I think it was. I don't think that was in this one, so hopefully I didn't spoil that for people that didn't watch this episode. But I enjoyed it. I thought it was a really cool escape. Wrecker got to blow up the ship, and he cries and stuff. It's like it's beautiful, and he blew up like all the ships as they go back down. So that was pretty cool. And then we get to the end, and Echo decides, like he feels he is different now. Like he's not the person that he used to be. He's not just a part of this squad that kind of grew up, as one of the original clones, from the series as a rookie. And so he feels different now. And, basically Clone Rambo was like, hey, Hunter, if you don't feel normal with him anymore, you got a spot with us. And I thought they were going to kind of build that up and it was going to like maybe take an episode or two, but he ultimately decides to go with them at the end of the episode. And they have like a really nice moment where he just says his goodbyes and, they salute each other and stuff. And I was like, that would be interesting to see. And once again, I don't believe Echo is in Rebels and I haven't seen him anywhere else. So maybe that'll be the sad thing. Maybe he won't be affected by Order 66 and he has to kill them off. Or it'll be like something even crazier where he kills them and ends up dying in the moment. I don't know. That would be amazing, but it would also be like depressing and sad. But who knows what's going to happen there? Obviously, he's going to come back. They wouldn't introduce these characters and not bring them back later, especially for the Order 66 stuff, at the very least. They might not show up before that, but at the very least, they have to be at the end of this series. Like, you introduced the only set of clones we've ever seen do anything different outside of just, their hairstyles or the, the color of their uniforms. It's like, they are different. Some are taller, some look older, some even sound a little bit different. And it's like, they have to bring them back. So, of course, they will. We're going to see Echo again. But it'll be interesting. I don't know what's going to happen with them, but I'm definitely looking forward to how that plays out with, of course, this being the final season. I can't wait to see what they do. But I certainly enjoyed the episode. It'll be interesting to see how they do continue that storyline wherever it ends up popping up in this season. But I definitely loved it. It was definitely a fun episode. I like how everything was handled. And I like the ending. It was a nice little twist, but it was like, yeah, it fits because he's so different now. He's almost a bit of a misfit compared to, the Reggies, or Regs, I guess is what they call them. So it'll be interesting to see where Echo goes at this point, but I liked it. I thought it made perfect sense. It's like, yeah, he's just so different. It's like when people just grow apart. Like you grow apart and you come back together after a long time, and it's just like, yeah, it'll always be there what you had, but it's just different now. So I like that ending. I like that send-off, or temporary send-off, because like I said, I'm sure he'll be back. But we'd love to know what you guys thought about this one, so please put your comments down in the comment section below. Let me know your favorite parts about it, your least favorite parts about it. And with this being the end of what I will consider the very first arc of the series, or arc of the final season, I should say, what was your favorite moment in this arc? Like, was it them finding Echo? Was it, Echo kind of branching off maybe the possibilities of what could happen when he returns with, this crazy augmented group that we have in the Bad Batch, and whoever they may or may not, get their rules from, because that was one of the little things. It was like, we kind of just get orders. We don't really know who from. We just kind of get them. I'm sure that'll come into play for sure, especially, the Order 66 stuff. But for me, I think my favorite thing was probably just the way they show the action of the characters, because it was so different. Like the Jedi, you always see it that way, but with the clones, I mentioned in my last review, it was almost like a hive mind. It was like they were kind of using the Force a little bit. Like they seemed so insanely connected with the way that they fought. I feel like that was my favorite thing. And I think it's mostly me just having hope that that's going to be an actual plot element in the future, where it's like a part of their augmentation is that they're pseudo linked together. Because I'm like, they put so much focus on it. I was like, people don't fight like that unless they use the Force, or, they have like augmentation. So it could be me just being hopeful, and it probably is, but I hope it comes into play. I would love that. But that, I would say, is my favorite thing, is the Bad Batch as a whole, and just seeing new versions of clones, and that's even a thing. And they're only, unfortunately, this is the only time we'll actually get to see that. But I would say that was my favorite part about it. And of course, I do look forward to the possibilities of wherever we're headed with Echo and the Bad Batch, and obviously this season as a whole. The Mandalorian stuff, I just can't wait for that. But yeah, I'm excited to see how this ends up playing out for those characters in particular. So, of course, like I said, would love to know what your favorite part of this first little arc was, what your favorite moment from this episode was in general. So please put your comments down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.